We work very hard here at the Spectrum to let you hear all sides of important issues, and our weekly roundtable generally features political analysts. This week we have two policymakers, Democratic Congresswoman Joyce Beatty and Republican Congressman Pat Tiberi. I had the chance to talk to each of them about key issues, including Tiberi's recent trip to Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, and other Asian countries on a mission to create trade agreements.
It's interesting, Colleen. We have open markets. Long before I was in Congress, goods and services came into the United States and continue to come into the United States. Just look at cars. When I was back in college at Ohio State, there were Japanese cars, there were European cars, we have Korean cars now that consumers in America purchase. But our access for our cars into those markets are very limited. One of the things about trade agreement is trying to access their markets for goods and services. Where we have trade agreements, we have trade surpluses, both on the manufacturing side and on the agriculture side, which means more jobs for Ohioans. That's what these trade agreements are really about if they're fair. 96% of consumers are outside the United States. And these agreements that we are trying to negotiate with the Asian Pacific countries and the European countries will access 1 billion more customers for American businesses. And that means more people employed in America.
Don't those countries make it harder for our products to get into their countries?
Exactly right. That's what this is about. Where we have trade agreements right now, we have 20. That's all we have is 20. We have 20 trade agreements. Ohio products go to 210 countries, but we only have 20 countries where we have trade agreements with, which account for 60% of the goods and services that we export, because it's harder to access the markets where we don't have trade agreements. So that's what this is about, getting more trade agreements to have access to more markets, because they have trade barriers where we don't have trade agreements. So we can't access those markets for our goods, for our manufacturing goods, for our agriculture goods. Right now, I had meetings this last week with some European members of Parliament, with some African members of Parliament, where we're trying to get some trade agreements. We're having difficulty accessing those markets without agreements for our pork right here in Ohio, for our manufacturing goods right here in Ohio. So it's about accessing those markets fairly. But there's a lot of misinformation from our side, from protectionists in the United States, including some in organized labor.
On this issue, Tiberi is crossing party lines and working closely with the White House, while many Democrats are at odds with President Obama, believing the trade deals are unfair to American workers.
Obviously, representing Ohio, being able to look at jobs being a very key component. While I'm a big proponent of export-import, was very active with the export-import bill, but when you look at China, for example, and how they're manipulating the dollar, when we look at how hard hit we were, especially in northern Ohio, when we look over at Dayton and how hard hit they were, that we believe we have to be out in the forefront, and we have to make sure that we protect those who are here. So right now for me, it's been a difficult bridge. I've been listening to the White House. I've participated in meetings because I think you have to have all of the information. But I am very bothered, and I'm not at the point to say, yes, we have great information. We should have this trade deal that we're talking about now.
Beatty also says she believes GOP budget plans will be detrimental to hardworking Americans.
There are going to be cuts when we look at Medicare, when we look at the food stamp program, when we look at college tuition. We have fought so hard to try to make sure that we had lower interest rates, that we made college affordable. And now we're looking at cutting Pell Grants, SEOGs, so when you look at those hardworking Americans, the folks we should be giving tools of opportunity, those are the individuals that the GOP's budget is hitting the hardest.
And the Congresswoman says Republicans refuse to give credit to the Obama administration for any economic gains.
When we look at where gas prices are, when we look at the unemployment rate, when we look at what this president has been able to do, health care alone, with the number of people who were against it, and certainly we had hiccups, but if you look at now the number of people who were or underinsured and how they're insured now, if you look at the difference it's made in lives, and lives of people who were against it, I think that the GOP is just not giving this president credit for it. I think a lot of it is very personal to who this president is, and I'll leave it at that. So I think as we move forward to another president, we won't look back and see the mean-spirited and the things that I think some of my colleagues are doing simply because this president is President Barack Obama, and he is a man of color.
Gas prices are down, no thanks to this administration. If you look at, again, look at the facts. The president has a great viewpoint from the 30,000-foot level on gas prices, but it had nothing to do with federal policy or the federal government. It had to do with, quite frankly, some states that had incredibly friendly policy to allow North Dakota, for example, to allow for new technology to be used in horizontal drilling to access petroleum that had not been accessed in the past, both in Texas and North Dakota, on private lands. So this is, again, the president has a very different viewpoint. We still believe that Obamacare is a problem. Yes, there are more people that are covered than ever before, but there are people who had really good insurance who now have worse insurance. There are people who are paying less who are now paying much, much more. There are employers that are not hiring as many people as they could because of the cost to them provided by Obamacare or requirements under Obamacare that have caused them to do things that they wouldn't have done.
Do you think that the criticism is valid that people give Republicans that no matter what President Obama does, they will oppose it?
Listen, there's always been that. There are some of my colleagues that will always oppose a president no matter what. But there were always Democrats who opposed George Bush no matter what. There are people in both parties who do that. But listen, I'm working really closely with the president and Jack Lew, the Treasury Secretary, and Mike Froman, the U.S. Trade Ambassador right now. Quite frankly, much better than many Democrats are working with now on trying to get a trade deal done to help American exporters and create more American jobs. So, you know, some people like to paint that broad brush, but it's much more complicated than that.
But Central Ohio voters should find hope in the knowledge that their representatives are working together towards some common goals. I've talked to you and Steve Stivers and Pat Tiberi about this before, but the coalition the three of you have formed, despite your party differences, is remarkable. Do you know of any other congressional groups around the country that are doing what the three of you do?
I think we're starting to see some movement. Much of it might be a little destined with some of the other secret breakfast meetings. We're very open about our relationship that has been almost a 2-decade relationship. We have agreed that we can disagree without being disagreeable. We have also found common ground where I've signed on to a bill that was Pat Tiberi's and spoke on the House floor for it for a gold medal for one of his constituents. Steve and I have passed financial services legislation. Just this past week, Steve took one of my bill and got 6 Republicans to come over, and Pat Tiberi was the first one to sign on to it.
Well, first off, we like each other, which helps. All three of us like each other. We get along well. We have a history of that back when we were in the legislature. But you know, the founding fathers, both people on the left and the right like to talk about our founding fathers, but they don't really read about them a lot. The founding fathers, they fought hard, but they understood at the end of the day their different philosophies had to come together to get things done. It's the type of government that we have. We have to come together to get things done. We fight like mad for our principles and our beliefs, but in the end, you got to work together to try to get that ball across the finish line.